welcome everybody to our webinar on selling cyber. Hopefully, we've got a lively panel for you with some very different perspectives. So we have introductions. I'm Timur, chief researcher at Insight Revenue. And I'm joined here by Gil, Michael, and Jason. They represent three different perspectives. I'm going to pigeonhole them for you. Gil here is a chief revenue officer. He's very much a salesperson. Michael here is our consultant and advisor. He has conversations with CISOs telling them what they should be doing. And Jason here is very much a buyer. He's perhaps the subject of a lot of this work. But let me let them introduce themselves. Gil, let me start with you.
Thanks, Timur. Gil Fromovitch, pleasure to be here. About 25 years in the cybersecurity space. Done a lot of early stage companies. Started CyberArk for 15 years. It used to be an early stage company until it became a very proud household name. Then went to other domains like container cloud native security with Aqua and Cyberint, which was a threat intelligence space. And here privileged to be at Hadrian, an offensive cybersecurity company here in Amsterdam as the CRO.
Michael.
It's Michael O'Neill, coming to you from Canada. I'm a longtime consultant. I have worked with and for many different clients. Recently, I guess, in cybersecurity, I was part of the office of the CISO of a $14 billion company that dealt exclusively with Fortune 1000 publicly traded companies in the US. More recently, I've been a mentor, entrepreneur in residence for a university associated accelerator, incubator, focused on both helping early stage companies, as Gil was once, to mature, and also helping graduated cyber professionals to come together and deliver services to small community focused.
And Jason.
Oh, that's great. Similar in a long background, 25 years in government-related services, equal place between public policy and systems engineering enterprise solutions. Last several engagements with larger federal cabinet level organizations to the CIOs, CISOs, guiding how we make better decisions about buying products in this new ecosystem. Recently, most prominently in emerging technologies, things like AI, of course, and their juxtaposition inside of cybersecurity. But excited to be here with this really exciting group, and thank you.
Brilliant. I'm hoping sort of the 20 plus years experience on each of you will make some some good viewpoints that well, if not necessarily clash, bring some different perspectives. The occasion for this, in case anybody hasn't read the white paper, was a white paper we published earlier this year on selling cyber. It's as everybody will say, as you will have all noticed, it's a particularly rich field. I think at last count, I'd read there were something like 6,000 cyber companies out there in the market. It's a market with not surprisingly, the demand almost builds itself, in a sense that the bad actors become ever more sophisticated, and thus the number of solutions trying to combat this work. But given that background, given the sort of the enormity of the field, wanted to start with who do you think is the buyer, and where are they? The one thing that struck me as I was doing research, at one point I went to download a paper from one of the major providers, and those marketing forums, and it asks you to tell you what the role is, and I think it might have been 100+ titles I could have chosen from. Did not have my particular title there, but nonetheless. Gil, let me start with you. Like, who do you think is the buyer, and how are things changing?
It's a good question. Everybody looks at the CISO because obviously most of the cases he have the budget or he influence it to the CIO, but he's one. So if everybody will point at him, if all of these 6,000 companies will look at him, it will make him a very, very busy man just filtering and triaging. And most of the times he's looking at one of his team members who is the guy he trusts the most, his champion, to actually, give him a strong word of advice what to do or where should I look. So while the CISO is part of the process, and definitely, again, it also depends on the size of the company. There's some companies that's just one guy. He's everything. He's the CISO, he's the security engineer, and he's the security architect. But I would exclude these companies out. The big companies that have a team, and the CISO is definitely the one leading them. I would still say the one that we need to start a discussion is the champion. It can be head of, leader, manager, director of, depends on the structure and the maturity of the company. But I would start with that because he's closer to the problem, closer to the pain. And if he's a true champion, he can influence the CISO and start building things upwards.
Oh, brilliant, Michael. What's your perspective? And I should have said this all. Don't wait for me to give you cues necessarily.
Of course, I'm going to wait for you, Jim. That's a good correction for me. Including on how many people are involved in that decision.
Yeah.
Published last year that there's an average of 7+, and sellers are only able to identify on average 4 of those. It is a large and mysterious group that functions in different ways. There are a lot of segmentations, not 100. Whatever company had a list of 100 titles. Also, I'm certain lacked the ability to segment their responses 100 ways. I mean, broadly speaking, there are big companies and little companies. And in small companies, as Gil said, you've got one guy responsible for everything. In fact, in 50 or fewer employees, it's generally the person running the business who also decides about IT security. 17th concern, and even if they have an IT person, security is that's a difficult group to reach. And those people have one way of buying. In large organizations, you have multiple buyers, and you can kind of segment them by executive, manager, director, procurement. And procurement cares a lot about cost, a little bit about solution, and really works to standardize requirements as much as possible, which is very hard in a field that is as diverse and enormous and fast-moving as cybersecurity. Managers and directors look for solutions to the problems that they're currently experiencing, care a lot about that, a little bit about cost. Much richer group for suppliers to approach because they're closer to the problems that they're trying to solve. And then you have the executive level, the CISO, the CEO, the CEO. And those people tend to carry on. So, I mean, if what you're selling is, insurance, the ability to make sure that you regulations or legislation, then that's a fruit but they don't have. So if you're selling a point solution, which realistically most cybersecurity firms are, then the manager director level is trying to sell this cost standards. Procurement's a necessary.
Yeah. Jason will give you the last word. You were a buyer, but also with one wrinkle. So how does one get attention?
And I'll try to pivot the end of the answer because I really think that filling in from what Gil and Michael said that in larger enterprise organizations and structured the top decisions makers are looking at like business impact, right, and reduction of risk. That second layer, the managing team, is definitely more process driven, similar to the acquisition cycle. Absolutely, just gonna hit this is understand. We're going to talk about this, I'm sure. Understanding your customer, what those different personas are. Acquisitions has a very strict set, especially in government work we do, about what they can acquire. You could excite and enlighten everyone, but never get through the door. Finally, yes, absolutely. Cyber teams do have their wonderkin and the people who they go to say, is this product real? It's awfully hard to tell sometimes. But pivoting to how do you get into that door, there are so many different ways. It's really about tuning yourself into how they buy, right? And how following that track about whether you're going to be going to that conference to get an eyeball, or you're looking at industry days, or you're looking at solicitations, or you find that even like communities of interest. So definitely identifying those, I guess we could call them in this case personas, of the people that most likely are entry points into the decision making, and then understanding how they make those decisions, which I think we'll talk about. If you don't understand those wickets, it's awfully hard. We've turned away different companies from a readiness perspective until they can be there. Thank you.
Yeah. What's your sense of that? You spoke of the champion. Yeah.
The champion is the key. Without a champion, I'll differentiate. I'll say that in disruptive technologies, cybersecurity is always the balance between risk and compliance. What do you sell more? Okay. And if you sell compliance, then I think that many of the personas that Michael talked about, the procurement and the CEO, they'll care more about, right? Because it's insurance and, it has other implications. It's really the business that is implied by pure compliance. But if it's risk, of course, there is also business implications, but risk is something a bit different. It's a bit more disruptive. It can be in AI. Okay. It can be so many new technologies that introduces new risks that then you're buying disruptive technologies. I came more from the disruptive, innovative companies, and then you really need to find champion that understands what you are selling, because you are creating something new. You need to create pain, not just to identify the pain. And then the process starts upward again through your champion to whoever, the CISO, the CIO, the virtual CISO. But it starts from the champion, because you need to have somebody that understands both what you're trying to solve, but also have the appetite, the risk appetite, to actually take this leap of trust. I would say that you're that company. It can be a 10 people company, 50 people company, where you might be using to buy something from Microsoft or big companies. It's not the same. And to put your crown jewels on something like this is it cannot be done unless you have the appetite from the other side, the champion, and to identify and to build and to have all of this champion emotion is an art by itself. Not every seller can do it. There's a lot of knowledge that you have to educate them. You have to feed them. I would say it's sometimes even the challenge is more not to find and to sell to the champion, actually how to help this champion to sell it internally to his side of the business. So how he can be a proxy inside.
Gil's just to talk to that. I think that's very accurate in the sense of a couple things. I mean, when buying maybe substantial investments, right, in federal organizations or even larger companies, you do need somebody assisting and working on the inside. One thing that's hard, I think, for a lot of companies to do is decide, what's that level of effort, right? What is the effort I'm going to spend in building that relationship? Whether it's like scattershot, right, and hoping it hits, or like investing. Part of that is for products is we're in a unique place now where You don't have to change the buyer to understand how to use your product, which is really hard. You can do a lot to tailor at least what you're talking about and selling, and tailor and frame the product to work within that environment. But that takes time, and so yeah, really having like the keen sense, business sense, right, of understanding who you need to invest your limited time in is probably pretty important, especially if you want to make that commitment.
Jason's first comment, and not that your second one was. Jason's first comment, and something that Gil followed, I think raised a point. I don't. It's really. Cybersecurity start talking risks from things like AI. Risks, clearly stated, those are threats. And I think understanding that cyber tools to achieve risk reduction by addressing threats is an important distinction to make, because ultimately you shouldn't try to sell a tool on its ability to reduce risk unless it is specifically tailored to that. Almost all tools are designed to mitigate in one way or another a specific. I think it's important to understand that as you're managing threats, you reduce your risk level.
Yeah. No, it's a good. I mean, I feel like it's teed in well into this sort of data. This is cross industry, admittedly, but the point of it is, I won't narrate it to you, is both sellers and buyers do actually find the promises around sort of functionality, performance, service somewhat credible. Where both parties, interestingly, but especially buyers, lose faith is they don't necessarily believe in the business case. They're not convinced that this thing that they think does actually work is going to help them. And so, Jason, I thought we'd start with you. You've bought these things. Like, how do you validate? How have you gone about validation?
That's a great question, and so I always go back to like nothing's changed, everything changed in the sense of how we evaluate. There is sort of a more rapidity in the sense, especially in working lately in emerging technologies, about how we help companies bring things in that we see value and get. You have the advocate. They're not technically ready in the sense of proven that they have the full tail end ops cycle and maintainability. But back to your question about, I think relative to this chart is like how are you going to demonstrate value? Is the buyer has to be very clear about what their KPIs, what they're searching to gain. And so specifically, it's transparent in the sense of like making the seller do some legwork. We want to look at now, used to be 4 major vendors, now 15. We're going to have some really good cut points about how to eliminate. We don't have unlimited time, as I mentioned, none of us do. And so you can't put it on us to make the evaluation hard. So we're going to have to come up with a way, whether it's some big ones, as Michael had said, total cost of ownership of a product, not just what it's going to cost me to buy it. It could be something more specifically like how easy is this to maintain? What is the actual, you had talked a little bit about risk equation. That's so good. Threat, vulnerability, consequence, right? Each of those drivers actually define like what your risk scoring is going to be. You created a product that reduces a threat that has limited consequence. You're not going to look at buying it. So look at the structured evaluation. Some companies do a lot better job once you get past that initial, presentation, but come in like answering, ask the buyer, what are your technical evaluation criteria? And then you'll be able to fit how your product's going to help and decide whether it's actually going to work out in the end as well.
Gil, does that resonate in your lived experience?
Day in, day out, absolutely. I think, behind the scenes, I would say that there are, the ICP is important one, right? I mean, you join a company and you think that every customer in the world will be your customer because everybody should have the pain. But then you understand that, first of all, different customers have different priorities, and maybe you're not the first five, you're on the 10th of them. So maybe you have to wait. So to demonstrate value is not always to convert it into my mission, which is a successful customer and a successful journey. There's a gap between. And I think that the other thing to understand is, especially in cybersecurity, the fact that we introduce new solutions, technologies, offering, it's cool from our side as a vendor, but we need to say what's on the CISO side. He needs to say, listen, I was not protected or I didn't have my posture right before I brought this solution. I need to have a fix. He's sometimes can be weak in this situation of defending why do I need to introduce a new solution, a new technology. And we need to understand that, because I think sometimes they actually do understand the value and everything we do, but there is an internal fight inside of the business, inside the company, to actually justify why this over that, and why do I have to choose? There is a limited budget, by the way, not just money, but also resources and capacity. So it's everything together. So again, as I said, I truly, truly believe that the champion is help, assuming that we deliver the value and we've done our job right. There is another selling motion inside the business, not outside to us as a vendor, but inside to justify it, to defend it, to build a business case, just like Michael said. And it can be a combination of many things, the risk posture, the threat posture, but also the prioritization, and of course, sometimes even politics. How did you live before that? You were a 5-year CISO in this business. How come it's the first time you come with this solution? What does it mean for the past 5 years? We didn't have this risk. We didn't need it, and that is and there's a big hole behind it that sometimes takes time, and we need to understand it. And I think that's part of, by the way, the demonstrating value, if I would say, is that the more we can understand what's happening inside the customers like you are, 3 dots, the better we'll be as a sellers, and also to articulate the value and to be patient on this and to help our champion to fight internally.
Michael, you were laughing, so I have to get your reaction.
Because Bill said all kinds of stuff that I absolutely not only believe, but try to impart on the folks. I love this slide. I use it with my mentees at early stage cyber firms. There's another slide from your State of Revenue 2025 report that I also like to use, which talks to the trustworthiness of different sources. And it says that of 7 different sources listed that a buyer considers, the most trustworthy is third-party opinions, and the least trustworthy is the company's own words. And I use that with innovators, inventors who basically in most cases have found a cyber problem that they couldn't solve and built a company to solve that problem, and now believe that people should buy this product because it solves the problem that they had as a buyer. It's like, you bring this to a CISO, and they might well agree that your product is absolutely the best product and at the best price. But, as Gil said, it's not just dollars, or it might have been Jason, I'm sorry. You both made great points. It's not just dollars, it's resources, right? And the CISO is required to maintain an environment, and you're trying to sell a better approach to avoid that environment. But if that point echoes through the environment and breaks something else, a dependency, then the CISO doesn't get a bonus for having spent less money on a better solution to one point in a big fabric. But they do get fired if the entire environment goes down. So you're asking them to take a risk. And that's why you end up with innovation really looking kind of like a three-cornered solution, right? You have buyers who are being told do more with less, which of course is impossible. You do less with less, but you can do different things that give you better impact for your expenditure, and that involves bringing in innovation. But as the CISO, you need to de-risk that purchase. So you want a supplier, an integrator, of one sort or another, who understands your environment and takes away the risk by saying, I can introduce innovation in a managed way that makes sure that it doesn't break everything around it. And then you have the innovators desperate to get to that customer, but ultimately realizing that they need third parties whose opinions matter to the buyer and who can de-risk the buyer's purchase decision in order to integrate within a fabric rather than trying to reinvent the world around the one technical breakthrough they achieve.
Yeah. I mean, that's in a way my transition point here is one thing we found in the research was the importance of sort of needing to fit somebody's environment and I think in cyber more than most, not surprisingly, people are a little bit more motivated by loss than the gain necessarily. Yes, cyber could make your business more agile, but above all, I think people want to make sure their operations continue to run, and so they're loath to introduce new things sometimes. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like, how do you think of changing somebody's evaluating and then maybe changing their posture towards change?
Sure. Go ahead, Michael. From our perspective, this is so good to think about. Is like CISO is always reacting from the pain of the last cyber attack and go fix that, right? The reactiveness. I need to be showing that I was thinking about something before, and it just didn't bubble up until we actually got compromised, especially in the just diversity of nation state actors and the things that they're doing, whether it's just low-level ransomware attacks or supply chain stuff. It's like it's everywhere all at once. And so there's the recent pain in showing leadership that we're, that door is open for something we need to fix immediately. Obviously, those decisions are very short term in some ways, right? Because it's going to be the next thing. Oftentimes in your downtime, you really do want to be thinking proactively because that's how you can spend a lot less in solving it. And so oftentimes the building, the pleasure you get from like finding a new solution, maybe like raising something we look at a lot is raising the maturity level, right, of the organization in response to the cyber threat. Those kind of things happen often and take longer lead times, but longer engagements and feel great, as well. And then finally, there's the probably right is the connection between the two and everybody else, in your peer group, got hit, unfortunately, and you didn't because of those two things you did, proactively and were ready. So that's this chart's great, and it's certainly good to define what your approach is going to be based on the what the buyer wants at the time, right? What they're looking for.
Yeah, Gil, I'm assuming you run up against this. Yours is a novel solution. I assume the buyers have to have a certain level of maturity.
It's a beautiful word because we in Hadrian we actually built a maturity model exactly because it helped us to understand for exactly the topic, right? How do you evaluate somebody's change of posture? So is he ready? And if he's ready, where is he now? So if we build 5 stages of maturity, and we can understand where you are. And if we understand where your starting point, we can also understand where you want to go. And both from maturity and also from his mindset of a change, you can actually then start having a journey together because you can actually have the same language of You want to run, perfect. How fast do you walk today? Or you're crawling, and you cannot from crawling go straight to run. It just does. It doesn't happen. So okay, let us help you to go there. And it helps in many ways. It really helps because it's a great way for us as sellers to qualify the maturity, the journey that they need to do. Again, how long it's going to take. It gives us, and I would recommend to anyone to build something like this because it gives you the thought leadership to actually, buyers, Jason, I'm sure, would be happy to learn from other vendors who have seen other customers in other situations. So I want to learn not just technology. I want to learn process. I want to learn methodology. And if you have this experienced people that can actually share this journey of a maturity, how you can eventually run, then you can also build your next strategy the next year or the next quarter and take it with that, and with the lines. There should be a strategy. Okay, a CISO, as much as he listens and learns, it needs to align to his business, into his, companies are so different than the other. One is very digitalized, one is very OT, one is internal, one is very cloud native. They're not the same. So different systems will have different strategy. By the maturity model, we found that it's very helpful that you can, first of all, understand who is on the other side, if there is an engagement, if there is maturity, if there is the right mindset. And it also helps you to actually have a very interesting dialogue with them. Do you want to go there? And if so, perfect. We can show you how.
Michael, how personal do you think this is? Because the one thing I'm very boringly point out to people is that so on average people are risk averse, right? But not everybody is. And candidly, like a lot of entrepreneurs are not actually very risk averse.
Of course they're not, but buyers are different. And Jason put a finger on it. There's a saying, never waste a good emergency or something like that. It's the very best thing is if your direct competitor got hit by something, go in and look for more budget. And the next best thing is you're the successor to the CISO who at the firm that got hit, who got fired because they got hit. Now you get more budget. But Gil's approach to building a maturity model, I was making notes because it's a really interesting way to do the very hardest thing in this industry, which is to prove a negative. If we hadn't put this in place, something bad would have happened. Right? And nobody wants to buy that. On average, nobody wants to buy in that. Look at the healthcare system, right? Billions of dollars for acute care and like nickels for preventative. That's just not the way that people tend to buy, right? Now, and cybersecurity vendors are always looking for a way to say, if you buy us, will accelerate your business model. And it's true. If you integrate security, for example, into DevSecOps, so that your software isn't developed and then halted with a great big anchor labeled security that you need to pull forward before you put the software into production, you move faster than the companies that do have the anchor, right? But you need to be, I'm glad you have this chart because you need to have a certain level of maturity to believe that. I do think that with the increasing pace of life, particularly, I don't want to blame everything on AI, but particularly because of AI, that the need to react faster, speed will become a measure of viability, even to a greater extent than it is today. And proactive cybersecurity will become an important component of enabling that speed of motion.
And on that point, we've chatted about this. Like, how much do you all believe that sort of agility is actually attained by playing nice with others in a way, like being being able to prove that you're sort of part of an ecosystem, that you fit a system, that
100%.
Yeah.
100% on that. And so, a lot of times, look, everyone's going to have their community, as we talked about. Buyer community being, the CIOs are sitting on panels and boards talking to their colleagues and friends across large organizations. They're going to the affiliation groups and talking about what they do and what they're doing to be ahead. And and it is there is a little aspect of the Me Too thing. Michael had said it. Okay, where's your AI? What's your AI doing? A lot of our forward momentum, I think, actually has been in sort of moving towards more predictive analytics, data analytics, and stuff like that, and bringing in new tools. So that's directly coming from the top down about go investigate, and this is what my peer is doing. And so I think it's really important to look for where those groups are, because they are looking, they're excited. They're not just here to get their job done. They want to have fun too, and come back with new ideas about how to address the problem from a higher level.
And, what you say, Jason, really, Timur was nice enough to identify me as being part of Uptime Institute, which is a great big client of mine. And in that role, I deal with executives from the world's largest data center operators. And we did a great big project last year on AI in OT environments and data center environments. The one common obstacle, no matter what you looked at, predictive maintenance or guardrails or what have you, was a two-sided trust gap. Where on the one side, the people running these operations don't trust AI. And on the other side, their clients don't trust them if they don't use AI. And they're squeezed between these points of, I don't really trust AI to make decisions for me, but my budget will dry up if I don't demonstrate that I know how to do it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that is a pressure that everybody in this industry is feeling.
Yeah, gives me really to my last question here, pulled from some headlines. Part of me thinks this is brilliant marketing, right? Mythos is going to, destroy us all. But I mean, what's your sense? Is this changing everything, Gil? Starting with you, because you are bang in the middle of this.
So you can speak about AI in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
As a new risk, is it a new dimension of risk? And of course it is, because we're uploading data, and when we're sharing, we can speak about it from the buyer perspective. Does our buyers change their behavior because of AI? Because instead of, they used to go to conferences and listen to webinars like this and so on, and maybe now you just go to Claude and ask, hey, give me the best product in this category. So we can speak about AI in so many ways. I will say that definitely from the buyer's perspective, things are changing, because AI can do, again, we can speak also on the risk perspective, but and the risk that AI is introducing. But on the buyer's perspective, if it used to be in the past, listen to analysts and webinars and read, today you can actually just say, take all of these, whatever, reports, analyst reports, and summarize it for me, and tell me the top, functionalities, use cases that I need to search in solution A, B, C, or in this category. And in that perspective, I'll say that my biggest fear is that I see sometimes hallucinations by AI, which if the model will just get the wrong conclusions because it wants to please us, and from different reasons, I'm seeing it sometimes more and more, our buyers will just have the wrong shopping list of what they need to do, or what they need to have, and they'll search for something that might not even exist, because they will be fed by the model, and the model will just say, you need, for this AI security problem, you need something that doesn't even exist, and then he will just boil the ocean and exhaust himself and everybody else on searching something that doesn't exist. And that's my biggest fear in the buying motion of how do we make sure that we that AI helps us to be efficient rather than elude us to uncharted territories.
Yeah, very interesting. Michael, Jason, what are your thoughts?
You first, fine, sir. I have too much to say, so I'd love to pivot off you.
Okay. Well, then in that big project, it took the better part of a year with the data center leaders. One of the elements we decided to focus on that we found to be much more important than I expected it would be with respect to AI was staff enablement, facilitating staff adoption of AI. And it turns out that if you don't do that, your AI strategy fails. And there was a great survey last year from writer.com. And I have a quote from it right up on the screen beside of me. So if you're looking at my ear, I apologize. But, one of the quotes is one that I use with executives. It turned pale as soon as I say it. Because of fears of AI replacing jobs and concerns about the quality of AI tools, 41% of millennial and Gen Z employees admit they are sabotaging their company's AI strategy. Okay, so you don't want to invest in a technology that your own employees are intentionally disabled. And the paragraph right below it in this summary says 35% of employees are paying out of pocket for the generative AI tools they use at work. And the same executives, once they put their jaws up off the floor from the first quote, say, well, why would they do that? We pay for tools. So it's like, yeah, but what if you pay for a tool that your coder doesn't like, or you pay for a tool that the coder runs out of tokens on the 17th of the month. They need to use the tool until the last day of the month. And what they end up doing is using the tools they're comfortable with. But that means 35% of employees are using tools that are outside the corporate security envelope, which if you're a CISO, that's where you turn pale and your jaw hits the floor. The complete unwillingness of executives in many cases to recognize that just dictating a strategy from on high for AI will result in positive results is a big part of the problem. I mean, they'll tell their developers, you've got AI tools, develop faster. The developers feed the code, as Gil was saying, into whatever tool they like to use, and it comes back better. And then I know a guy, an analyst hacker type, who uses that to show executives he's talking to their own source code. And it takes them about 90 seconds to bring their source code up on the screen. And then those executives turn pale and they're like, how did you get our source code? It's out on the web. I don't compete with you, but people who do compete with you can also get your source code. So, yeah, this whole Wild West AI outside the established security envelope thing is a huge problem.
And great to pivot onto that. I mean, it's just like any kind of new enablement of technology, and we've all seen, how internet or social media, other types of technologies have impacted. And so, just an example, had a development team doing tailoring, cyber analytics, and they were making great progress, coming up with really like marquee dashboarding and things like that to be able to see a problem being solved. And so I'm like, I have a great idea. We're going to enable this even further. We've recently been able to get some AI technologies available to you to try out. And I sort of got a crosswise looking after the meeting. One of the lead devs came to me and said, we've already been using AI for the past 6 months. That's why you're seeing all this progress. We just don't fess up to it. So I think when you have an environment, right, where companies are behind where, big word, whatever, the zeitgeist of what people are doing every day at their desks at home and in curiosity and development, we need to catch up. And the catch up part is not, is having more of an acceptance of the use of the technology. But again, I think we alluded to this as in a company is being really good about framing how it should be safely used. You mentioned, Mike, how source code is available. Well, people are out there putting it out there for public consumption and breaking a lot of rules, and it's allowing more exposure, but it's also allowing threat actors to take advantage of that. So, but yeah, excellent Excellent. Mythos being an example. This is going to continue to develop. And yes, like everything, hats off. Great marketing, Anthropic.
I'll just echo one thing before, but a very recent model that has been released, really fresh from the last few days. In the small words, it says that all your searches and everything you upload will stay there in their archives for 30 days. So we have EU, GDPR versus US data centers. We have archiving whatever you upload to be across the ocean. Just a small capability, small LLM model, and look at how many implications it can have from, PII and source code being leaked and so many things that are not anymore in the company's control. It's going to be faster, and it is moving already faster. How do you control it? How do you make sure that you have the right governance and security checkpoints across everything? So, yeah, the technology is moving much, much, much faster than even. I mean, we speak about the CISO, how the CISO controls everything. He wakes up in the morning and he's not even aware of. He's already behind because maybe somebody used in a different time zone already that model, and you need to take it back. It's a very, very dynamic world, and I think we're just at the beginning of it because it's moving in faster cycles than we used to. From a security perspective, it's every time there is just a new interesting attack or a new interesting vector of compromisation.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you all. That's good. That's a great concluding thought. That this was. I mean, I think as you all said, like, it just gets faster and faster and faster, and you need more agility. So and this is the business of inside revenue ultimately. As the technology gets faster, how do we the sort of, what is it, the meatware? How do we keep up with all this software? And I think that the answer is, you need to work on bringing insight across the journey, because your buyer needs help, the sellers need help. In principle, maybe it hasn't changed, but in practice, it needs to be faster, done to higher levels of rigor, because, as you pointed out, Gil, somebody's interrogating an AI before they even call you. So you'll need to know exactly what you're up against. And as you all touched on, a lot of this comes down to change management and aligning stakeholders. It's not literally the technology, it's the people, the politics, it's what they need to be able to accomplish, the KPIs they report on, and then finding a champion. Like, how do you put together a plan that convinces everybody that you'll be able to survive the change, is how I would put it. It's not so much that the problem is often, I think, fairly obvious, especially in cyber. In this case, though, is it actually worth doing? So, yeah, no, again, thank you all, and wanted to see if anybody has any final words on that vein.
Just really, I think, great conversation. Really tuned in for me on what is happening right now. To be able to react quickly and get sleep. I think really following a good structure as you presented, and in the sense of like understanding how organizations work and change. But learned a lot from this conversation, and hope viewers did as well. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you all.